In case you haven't seen the commercials for Hulu's Boston Strangler movie, I'm here to tell you all about it in my creepy voice. For some reason, I sound a little bit like the movie trailer guy, so in a world of audio description, this has it on Hulu. I'm a blind film critic, and Boston Strangler is now on Hulu. So, yeah, of course I watched it, and it actually has a good cast. It passed all of my litmus tests for the year, where I was like, do I want to see it? I don't know that I was super excited about like a Boston Strangler movie. I feel like, there could have easily been a really kind of like straight to video version of this film with people we've never heard of before that was really tawdry and a whole bunch of bad acting standing around going like, I want to know, who is this Boston Strangler? It's like really but no. Instead, we got Keira Knightley, Carrie Coon, Chris Cooper, and Alessandro Nivola. So, two of those people are Oscar nominees. I'll let you figure out which two. It's up to you. It's up to you to figure that out. It's also from a director who I have not seen any of his previous work, but he did make a pretty big statement about how he didn't want to glorify violence, which is weird because there's some in it. So, I guess he felt like he couldn't make a Boston Strangler movie completely void of violence. Sure, I guess, maybe, I don't know. It just depends on what it is that you're thinking about. I think Spotlight is void of sexual assault, so I don't think, we didn't need to see a priest doing something in that film to a child in order to understand the concept of the film. But so he dips his toe in a little bit. There's a little bit of attacking and violence and some references to pictures which we may or may not be able to see. It's hard to tell. When in the audio description, when it lets us know that the characters are looking at pictures of things, do we see them? Do we not see them? I'm assuming we see them because it describes what's in the picture, so that's what I'm going with. So this really is Keira Knightley's film. I know that it sounds like the byline of the film really tries to make it sound like that this is She Said, where the two actresses are like sharing the brunt of the work together. No. Carrie Coon's character does not do nearly as much as Keira Knightley's character. She doesn't work nearly as hard on this case as Keira Knightley's character. Even at the end of the film, when they're like, where are they now? Like, Keira Knightley's character gets more of a, look at all the cool things she did. And the other woman is like, she stayed a reporter for 30 years. They remained friends. I was like, cool. So she didn't do anything else awesome with her life. She just kept doing what she was doing. Good. Cool. All right, cool. So Keira Knightley really is the star and the trailblazer here, which is unfortunate because I like Carrie Coon as an actress. I think she's a good actress. But also, damn, this is a good role for Keira Knightley. I didn't really feel like this was a typical Keira Knightley performance. And, good job. Go Keira. The film is about the Boston I don't know. It's about two journalists fighting against, this idea of women need to be barefoot and pregnant and sat at home, and people just keep looking at them like, why are you in the workplace? I don't take orders from women. There's a lot of feminism and sexism. If you saw Mad Men, you probably get a little bit of an understanding of what this film is going to go for. But like one of the big key features in here is that when they are writing about the Boston Strangler, um, they want to put their photos in the byline of the two women, and they're like, why? Because obviously, like, none of the men, nobody wants to see what any of the men look like. They're not, they didn't go out and hire Chippendales to to write for the newspaper. So, they're like, why do you think we have women? It's like, oh, God, this is a newspaper. So, I mean, some of that is really interesting. But some of it is it's interesting because some of it has to be for dramatic effect, I would think, because there are just so many conversations, so many little things that are said between people that feel like they're really key to the overall plot of the film. But you're like, who heard that? How did that get in this conversation? That becomes a he said, she said thing, and that becomes like oh, he told me, but he told me, and nobody else was around to hear it, and just believe me and go with it. It's a decent film in terms of journalist movies. Yeah, I this is one of those films where the film is decent. There aren't really performances that I would pull out and be like, oh, give this an Oscar run. That's kind of how I felt about She Said. I was a little surprised Carey Mulligan was getting so much damn attention for that film. I mean, they were fine, but it wasn't the reporters that were interesting. It was the people who they were interviewing that were interesting. Those were the people who were the ones that were like laying their heart and soul out. Here, Keira Knightley does a little bit more of the heavy lifting. It's a little bit less She Said and a little bit more spotlight, where you see a little bit more of how the journalists are working on the case, more than just going interview, and letting people talk. There's no real need to let people talk because the victims in this case are dead. So she has to kind of navigate and fight her way through, and so the underlying current here is how women are treated in general, and how shitty the Boston police department was back then, and whether or not they got the right killer. The film leaves you with that question of, did they actually get the right killer? Because there's a guy that they apparently really liked for it, but they couldn't get evidence for it back in the 60s. This is before, a lot of DNA evidence. But finally, there was one case that was linked to one person based on DNA evidence later on down the line. But there were 13 victims, so it doesn't mean they don't think that the same person did all of them. Maybe. That's the theory. Maybe it was 2, maybe it was 3. Maybe it was many people, maybe it was other guys that saw that there was a Boston Strangler and heard of how he was doing it, and then were like, I want to get on this. So, I don't know. But the film does leave you with a lot of questions of like, oh, what happened? I don't know. I don't know if that was a good thing or a bad thing, but it's, Also, don't consider that a spoiler because, again, this is based on a true story. You either know the Boston Strangler or you don't. I can't spoil things that actually happened, and I can't spoil things that happened before I was alive. I mean, look at me, and then think about the fact that this happened like 20 years before I was born. You've had plenty of time to learn about it. So it's not anyway. Yeah. It's fine. It's a fine movie. It's one of the better films I've seen this year so far. I have yet to give a film an A grade this year. I guess I'm holding out on that. I don't know. Last year around this time, I know I had like Atom Project and Deep Water that I both gave like A- to. Yes, I liked Deep Water. I'm sorry, I actually understand what Adrian Lin was trying to do with that movie. But, yeah, I'm not there yet. So audio description on this film is fine. I was actually really surprised at the end of the film. I wasn't even ready for it. I got sort of like a bombardment of the stuff because I thought this was pretty close to being a Hulu, like a Fox film. I thought it was going to be pretty much like a theatrical. But I didn't know that they were going to drop the audio description at the top, like they do for a lot of straight to streaming films, because this had the big bombastic. I was like, oh, this is a Fox movie. Okay. Well, you go, Fox. So I thought for sure we were going to get it at the end, and I wasn't quite ready for it. And then I didn't know anybody in the audio description, despite the fact that I swear I recognize that voice, but I did not. But I think the audio description here was good. Again, it focuses a lot on where it comes really in handy are actually in a couple scenes with the Boston Strangler, and as to what we can and can't see, as to how the attack is going. The fact that these women are not wearing a lot of clothes. He's attacking them at night, breaking into their house, so they're usually in their nightgown. I like the little things too. Like there's a reference to how a faucet is dripping, which it's such a little random thing, but it's cool to just have that there, because it makes me think that the director sort of honed in on the dripping of the bathtub, and it was a shot that we would have gotten if we could see, and now we get it in the audio description that way. So anyway, just some thoughts. There's nothing I would really do to improve the audio description. I was able to follow the film with or without it. But then again, films like this, investigative films, typically always tell you what it is they're trying to do, and they're kind of spelling everything out for you as the film goes along. So they're a little bit less of a mystery, because the mystery is being revealed to you sort of along with the plot. It's being very obvious about what it is that it is doing. It's not trying to hide anything from you. So it lends itself a little bit more towards that. Time to grade this baby. For the most part, it's fine. I think in the grand scheme of things, I think this is why this is on Hulu. It's a good, not great journalist adaptation. It throws a lot of things up in the air. You end up feeling sort of like, wait a minute, you told me it was one thing, it's really this other thing. Because the film just did not connect Keira Knightley and Carrie Coon nearly as much as it would lead you to believe they're connected. They're not nearly on the same level in terms of the amount of work that they're putting into this case. So there are just some sort of a few choices that are in this thing that I don't know that it made it a stronger film. I do like the fact that he did not glorify the violence. I think we do a lot of that nowadays, so I give him points for that. And I do think that Keira Knightley here does a really nice job. I haven't seen her do something like this in a while. I couldn't tell it was Keira Knightley. It didn't sound like her voice sounded even huskier. It just sounded like a completely different role for her. It sounded like her voice was changed in a certain way. It didn't even she completely modified her voice for this role. So otherwise it's a whole bunch of Boston accents. Everybody sounds like Mark Wahlberg or Ben Affleck, and that's the film. It's a pretty quick watch. It was under 2 hours, I believe. It felt like it was under 2 hours. So I'm gonna go Boston Strangler gets a B+. It's one of the better films that I've seen this year so far, but it still is not where I'm going to put it into the A category. I'm still waiting to be blown away this year. I've been close. I've been teased a few times with films like this, but I've not been blown away by a film release this year. Anyway, thanks for watching. Thanks for subscribing. And please, if you are new, subscribe. Because I like to talk about films that have audio description from a blind perspective. And keep trying to get audio description on titles that don't have audio description. It's incredibly frustrating. I also have a website. It's MacTheMovieGuy.com. You can follow me on Instagram or Twitter at MacTheMovieGuy. You can go to the audio description project, adp.acb.org. It'll let you know what is audio description and where you can watch it. And you can go to the ADNA.org. That's the ADNA.org. And it'll let you know who's working on the narration for your favorite films and television series. That is it for me today. I will review something else for you and see you on the other side.